Welcome back. So we're gonna start a bit earlier just to let some time at the end of the day so you can keep exchanging with the students on the Plateau project. So thanks again to be with us. I think we are all set. So let's go. Project Isaline.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first presentation for Project Isaline. Since it's the first time we meet, please allow me to introduce the team. So Zoe and Zoe are our game level and narrative designers. Taslim is our tech artist on the project. Maxime and Joachim are our programmers. Felix is our sound designer. Colette and Andres are our game artists. Arthur and Benoit are our UX designers. And I, Antoine, am the producer for this team. So let's go back to our project and let's go over the basics together. Project Isaline is a fast-paced first-person slasher involving melee-only combat and exploration phases. Playable with either keyboard and mouse or a game controller, the game is destined to both PC and current-gen consoles. As a single-player only experience, this double-A-sized project will come with a roughly 10 hours long story mode, as well as several other game modes such as Wave or Parkour mode.
So for our pillars, the game is designed to be built around 4. The first one is fast-paced melee combat. The second one is a nimble character controller that needs to be rewarding to play on its own. The third one is parkour exploration vertically to allow the player to reach new heights and views. And the fourth one is the character mutation. She will evolve from prey to an apex predator through the game, both physically and mentally, to be able to survive in the harsh environment that we will uncover just after. So the universe takes place in a world where an authoritarian power controls the dystopian world. Most settlements are isolated from each other and live clueless of the current state of the world. And so being born at a place means you will live all your life in here, contributing to your community. Our story takes place in the village of Osrin that live mainly from hunting and farming.
In Osrin lives Isaline, a foreigner of unknown origin. A difference is clear to Osrin native, but she is still integrated in the community. One day she disappears without leaving any clue. While everyone is worried, the wasteland is too dangerous to venture in, and no action is taken to find out what happened to her. To Enara, a lover, remaining idle is not an option. As a hunter, she knows the nearby woods and the mysterious hermit living in there. She asks him for help, and he offers a solution. She could mutate, gaining new abilities and transforming into something dangerous enough to survive the wasteland and bring back Isaline. While Enara's decision to mutate is driven by love and the urge to save Isaline, she will have to face the consequences of sacrificing her humanity. Her goal is very clear at first, but as the mutation takes over her body and mind, it will become increasingly difficult to her to focus on finding her love. In the end, when she finds Isaline, she may discover she lost herself on the way. Enara's ability will evolve as she mutates. She will gain effectiveness, additional charge, or special effects as she grows more powerful and threatening. Enara's core actions are the offensive moves, claw attack and dash, and the displacement move, so dash 2, dodge, wall run, jump, and slide. The vertical slice will include a mid-game stage of evolution with most of Enara's abilities unlocked. Some of the strongest evolution will not be available. Now we're going to show you a little prototype. We're working on the ability of Enara. By double tapping on the movement key, Enara dodge on the side. She can also slide on the ground, dash forward, and roll on walls. Enara's abilities to double jump is recharged each time she touches surface or ground.
The visual artistic direction for our project, it's going to lean towards a semi-realistic style, with some elements being on most the realistic, like the environment, and others into the stylized, like the characters. For the environment for our game, it's going to include the starting village and its surrounding forest, abandoned cities in a wasteland, and a huge technological metropolis. For the vertical slice, we'll focus mainly on industrial abandoned city in the wasteland with a lot of verticality.
So the vertical slice taking place in an abandoned city, industrial city, it would require a lot of work to model every buildings and props. So we've decided to take a procedural approach using Houdini and its integration capacity within Unreal Engine. The goal is not to generate procedurally the city and props, but to give tools to the artists and designers so they can be more efficient in their workflow and create large environments faster without losing time on repetitive tasks. Here you can see a pipe and building generator we've been working on.
Inara's mutation will evolve throughout the game, getting closer to a monstrous nature as she gets stronger, while having to fight harder and harder to keep her mind under control. The claws will always keep a curvy but sharp aspect, expressing both power and agility. In the vertical slice, we will show a mid-game stage of the mutation, as opposed to the early and late phases shown in this concept art. These powerful abilities will allow Inara to slash through dangerous foes. In the full game, enemies will take many forms, several automated security systems, guards from the authoritarian power, or creature in the wasteland. In our vertical slice, the only enemy type will be an automatic turret put in place to pacify the wasteland. Please note that this is a work in progress and we only have a mood board for the turrets now.
To match the visual aspects of the game, all sound will follow a semi-realistic to realistic artistic direction. There will be a strong collaboration between UX designers and sound designer, as a lot of information needs to be conveyed to player for an optimal experience. Those signals will be both visible and audible to increase players' understanding of the opportunities and threats around them. Here is a small example of what you can hear in the ruined city, where the vertical slice takes place. In the vertical slice, sounds and ambiances will emphasize the oppressing and hostile atmosphere of the ruined city.
Those concepts and decisions were made in accordance to our target. We defined two targets. They have the same player profile. We have something that we call a destroyer voyager. But each of these profiles has more specific interest, more specific expectation. In one hand, was something who loves nervous gameplay, loves fast-paced and intense gameplay, and like being immersed in a particular universe and alternative world, like Oswin. And in the other hand, we have something who loves aggressive gameplay, a lot of frame page with violence and destruction, and like unconventional character, like Inara. And the objective of this persona is to transmit the intention of a game developer to the users. My bad. In order to reach a wider audience, we aim to create accessibility features for Project Isaline. For now, we are planning on adding color blindness features, remapping option, and as well captioning for our dialogue. In another way, we're going to introduce more features because I think we can do many things to help as much as people we want.
So we conducted a few preliminary studies on competitors and inspirations and how Project Isaline would fare against those. So our key concept for competitors would be either the fast FPS genre, would be in combat, traversal, or both, or melee first-person games overall. With this in mind, we identify those 8 competitors, and we think it would be interesting to compare that to our game. Then we place those games and Project Iselin according to 2 axes. The first one would be level-based versus open world. Dishonored standing in the middle for its open world level-based areas. And the second axis would be first-person ranged combat versus first-person melee combat. So as you can see, we hope to raise interest among players of all those games while particularly appealing to Ghost Runner players. As we are still conducting the analysis on the production cost, we aim to improve this study from presentation to presentation as we get closer to releasing the vertical slice. Thank you everyone for your attention, and now it's time to listen to your questions and inputs.
Who wants to start? Yeah, I see you not so good.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. It's more like a comment before. I think you need to pay real attention to the 3C on this project because you will have a lot of work on the camera, on the animation. Do you include some ad bobbing, some realization at large? It's a big work, so be careful. And my second comment is more like a question. Why didn't you include in your benchmark Titanfall, Destiny, or even Overwatch?
First of all, it was included in our benchmark. It's just that it's not games that it's game we inspire for the parkour-like combat, but feel more it's ranged games, and our competitors are melee based. But yeah, we know that we should inspire, and we've been benchmarking them a lot for the juice of the placement.
Especially Titanfall on the terrestrial.
Completely.
I think. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. A few comments. I like the fact that you are trying to find smart way to create your world. We talked a little bit about this already, but it's great. But you know the danger of it now. So I won't go too much on that. So I want to follow up the comment of my colleague on the 3C. So you have a fast-paced game. And fast-paced game needs a lot of gameplay density to be interesting all the time. I mean, whether it's gameplay or like entertaining, like you need to be basically on amphetamine all the time, and you need to be entertained all the time, which means visually, gameplay-wise, and stuff like that. How do you approach the, I don't know, like the rhythm that you want to give to your game, and what are your plans to handle this gameplay, I mean, that's density of entertainment with your control?
I'm not quite sure. We've been working on several layers of level design and trying to design enemies. Like you saw, it's still a work in progress, to be as entertaining as possible on the combat aspect and the nimble aspect of the character. So for now, we are more gym-based than level-based on our development testing, but I do believe that we are capable of mixing moments of exploration, so heavily movement-based parts and action-based. We still need to iterate on it, and we're being cautious on it a lot.
All right, thank you. And I just have a tiny question for, or maybe an advice or something like this for the, I don't remember your name, I'm sorry, UX guy. So you're trying to do some accessibility features for colorblind people. It's great. Still, your game is going to be very fast-paced. And the readability of it, it's going to be core to the game experience. And how do you work with artists to making sure that I don't know, like the contrast are good enough, or do you have plans for like making the enemy and the goal of the player like really clear into the environment?
Okay, so thank you for your feedbacks. And yes, we already are thinking of that. I have many solutions that we have to discuss with arts and game designer, because I think it's everybody in this process, not only a game artist. And of course, we can create many things like layers, for example, to offer the possibility to see more the enemies. And in the color palette, we will work with Andres and Colette about that, to offer an environment that is readable, not, how can I explain that? Not be on a huge amount of colors to lose the players, but stay to accord a colors to some kind of elements to make the player easy to read on where he need to go, what he need to fight, and what he need to avoid. I hope this answer to your question.
Hi, this is David from Creative Assembly. I've got two questions. The first one is about, this is a first-person game. You've spent some time on your character development. Where in the game will I get to experience my character? Because I'm not going to be spending very much time seeing my character because I'm in first person. So where are you going to exhibit to me that change over time that you're putting energy into?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, it's quite a question. We ask ourselves what we should need to represent. The artistic, graphical aspect is good because it gives us a clear view of what we should emphasize for the sound design, for the action, for what you see in the game. And on top of that, it's logistically interesting because on the world of Osrin, on the city of Osrin, but on our world, there is not access to a lot of technologies, so there's no mirror, you won't be able to see your character. But once you become, so you might see you at the beginning in the menus before you launch the game to help players identify themselves to the character, to Enara. And at the end of several parts of the game, you will be able to see your character a bit and have this shocking moment of, oh, this is what I look like now. I'm ugly, I'm monstrous. And the idea is especially to not see yourself every time you mutate, but at some point where there is a gap, a clear gap in visual transformation.
Okay, that'll be very interesting to see. And do you think you'll be representing that in your vertical slice? Is that going to be something we're going to see, or is that something you're just going to imagine?
In the vertical slice.
Okay, okay. And then my other question was about the opponents. So it was very interesting, you were showing the gym movement. Do you envision the opponents also having those same abilities, or is this, tell me more about the opponents, the enemies.
So for the enemies, for now, we are very early in the process because we are doing everything we could to research it. For now, the opponents are mostly immobile and not immobile.
Yeah, you have turrets,
sorry,
right?
they're floating. I mean that they're not humanoid.
Okay.
They do not have the same moveset as the character have.
Okay, so you were talking about turrets, correct? Is that?
Yeah.
And that's what we'll see during the vertical slice will be the turrets. Okay.
Most likely, it's
stationary. I'm moving through the environment. The opponents are holding still.
Probably, it's still not completely sure. We are 1 week away from getting the answer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I need some time to go to the next question. So I don't know if that's online. There wasn't when I checked. Maybe Adrien, if you want to say aloud the comments you wrote, because the students can't see what's written in the chat.
Yeah, it was just maybe an idea, but because we online, we just saw the last slide for the last 10 minutes or so, it would have been maybe a great idea for all of the team to just have a basic sum up of what the game is on the last slide, rather than a just thank you, which is great, but would I love to have someone else to watch actually, but maybe for next time.
Thanks for the comment. It's a great idea.
And it's me again. Sorry. No, I'm going to bounce off on what David said, because he asked you the question if at some point you will be able to see your character, so as a 3D model, and you are answering yes. So that means that you have double 3C to make.
No, not necessarily. The idea is if you are a first-person shooter and you see yourself in front of a mirror or something like that, you do not have another camera, just you see yourself in the reflection.
Okay, it's just a reflect.
Yeah,
You're
completely.
not, but you have to do the animation.
Yeah.
Because basically when you are crafting a first-person game, you're not dealing with a 3D model. So you will have to do another model for this only purpose.
Actually, this could completely be cinematic based.
Okay.
The time you view the characters, so maybe
I'm a bit
not.
reassured because double 3C, it's going to be really tough in 3 months. And another comment, because I didn't say that before, but I'm kind of discourage you, but maybe that's just me, and I'm not into the technical aspect, but I tend to discourage you to go to procedural because this is a vertical slice, and at this point I think you should rather go directly in the level design, handcrafted, to make your vertical slice, and it will ease you really the work, especially if you have a face-based gameplay.
To make it clear, it's not going to be procedural. It's just going to be a tool where you can feed gray block and it put clothes on it, like it put windows and stuff. Like the goal is not to have a generator which like create the level for us. It's more a tool where we still have a level created by the level designer, but they put blocks and it helped them put complex shape on it. So we don't have to put a lot of time creating all the buildings one by one. We can just put blocks and it works.
Okay, because just in that type of game, because you have a traversal that could be really hard to make, metrics are going to be key. So
yeah. We are going to try to implement the metrics into the generator so it works with it. So it should be quite flexible to work with that. It's the end goal at least.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Isaac, you have a question?
Yes, thank you for this really interesting talk and presentation on your game. I was really interested in one thing you said. You said that going through the game, nearing the end, we'll discover that it's way more difficult time passing to keep attached to our first mission, that is refund our love. And I wanted to know if that objective is linked to some mechanics in games, or it just led by narrative. Is there a way, for example, for me really playing to feel that I'm losing the objectives? Are they less visible? Are the mission less clear? Or is it just being with, I don't know, cutscenes? Or how do you think to transfer that?
To answer shortly, it will be mostly narrative. We don't intend for the loss of control to impact the player's experience. So that will be translated by maybe a change in what Inara could say and how many enemies you have to slay before reaching your destination. Maybe that would show that she is not taking the easiest decisions, and she just goes straight ahead no matter how many enemies she meets, and doesn't really care anymore about wreaking havoc, but would not impact the controller and how the player experiences the game. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think I still have a little desire to another answer, but it's your project. But yeah, I think that if there will be even little cues or ways to just let you even feel it and just not have this put on the story, maybe it will benefit the project. But that's only me. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
Hello, Gaston, user researcher at Ubisoft Bordeaux again. I had some question regarding the story, because you spent quite some time to get us into like the setting of the game and the story between the two characters. And I think I understood at some point that you were talking about the fact that she loses herself in the way of getting more and more mutation. Do you plan to have like some narration around this? Like, is the character gonna shift psychologically and become like crazy at the end of the game? Or is it just like physically she's not a human anymore?
No, the evolution take also her mental state into account. First of all, when she talks, she say phrases. There will be a clear change in her voice and the things she say. Also, with some passives of the game, of the characters, she will gain some power-ups that will emphasize the times she wreak havoc by setting her into some kind of adrenaline shots and rush, and when she with tunnel vision and you destroy everything you have in front of you. But on the same time, also in the narrative, there will be clear evidence that what was your quest to save the love is turning more into, oh no, I need to push forward no matter the difficulty, as Antoine said.
Yep, thank you. I think it's a really interesting approach, because my guess is that at the beginning of the game, you're really, I mean, as a player, you can understand the character, and the more and more you go into the game, you're like, what am I doing? Is it really worth it? So that's cool. That's a huge challenge, though. So good luck with that.
Thanks.
Hi, so Cécile, part of the sourcing team at Focus Entertainment. I might have missed it, so apologies if it's just me having some nap time. What is the structure of the game like? What guides my progression? Like, do I have objectives? Is it purely narrative-driven?
We didn't answer that, so don't worry. It's more level-based with some exploration enabled inside each level, and you have one clear objective that will maybe change inside the level because there are twists and things like that. But it's the basic structure of the game for now.
Okay, so each level is a contained, objective. Okay, great. And just side note, what happens if I fail? Is it do I have checkpoints inside the level? How long do you plan the levels to be?
We haven't answered this question yet, but we do not intend to make you take a 40 minutes back on the gaming experience. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Thanks. Are there some other questions, remarks? Yes.
Yes, very quick, I don't know, remarks. I think for the next presentation, you need to clarify the goal of what you're doing. Like seeing that you had a lot of questions about narration. And like from what I understood earlier, talking a little bit with you guys and stuff, I'm not sure your game is like narrative centered. It's more like gameplay first, and it's about the game experience itself, the skill that you need to do into doing your action, and like the narration is just like it's almost a side note for like your experience. It's more like a support, and so maybe put the narration after explaining the gameplay and what you want to give like to the player emotions and stuff like that. You want them to feel adrenaline and stuff, maybe not bring a tear to their eyes because she can find her lover. And maybe it's good to think about how to assume that, because it's totally okay if you assume that it's not a narrative game, it's pure destroying fun. And it's okay, it's totally okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. So Sylvain from Ubisoft. What will be the player's progress during the game? I mean, there is some level. The character we have mutation. Does these mutations will be imposed on the player? Can I choose the mutation I will have, or may I choose to avoid mutations if I do some particular things in the game, or else?
We asked this question. We have not totally answered it yet. For now, what you can imagine, most likely, is that you won't be able to avoid the mutation. You will have, you will receive it at clear marks of the history as you progress into the game, and you won't have the ability to choose between several mutations.
Have you played Mark of the Ninja?
Personally, no. Maybe
this setting really, I really think about this game because it's kind of the same settings. The ninja receive marks with making kind of superhuman, and at the game's progress, the madness take his minds, and I think we really should try this game.
Thanks a lot. Ça y est, c'est bon.
Good? Yeah. I'm Alexandre from Show Games, gameplay programmer. I have a question about the traversal and the combat. You name Ghost Runners in your competitor, but what will be the fight in your game between traversal? Is it will be puzzle game like you will find a spot to attack the turret, or there will be a lot of turret to take down?
Most likely the second one. But the idea actually is to evolve even the playstyle through the game. So at the beginning we need to emphasize that Enra is a human, she is weak, she is breakable, she's made of meat. And so maybe one turret will be enough to kill her. At the end of the game, she will have all the swift abilities with loads of power-ups and loads of destructive power. And so maybe there will be loads of turrets, and maybe she doesn't even need anymore to destroy them, but it's rewarding, and so she will do it.
You talk about reward, about destroying turrets, but what kind of reward will I have?
The wow effect of destroying them with our beautiful FX.
Okay, that's all?
Maybe not, we will see.
Okay.
We still need to work on it.
It could be interesting for as a player, the more havoc I caused, the more powerful I feel. I think, I don't know, I'm destroying a turret, I have a burst on speed or something like that. You know, just emphasize the fact that your character needs to destroy things to feel, to be stronger, and make the player feel stronger by destroying things, just not the wrecking havoc for the sake of it.
Thanks.
I think that was the final question and remark. So thank you again for the presentation and the exchange.
And let's welcome the next group, the solo show.
Okay. As you walk home by night, you're drawn to the lights and noise of an art gallery. Inside, you discover a strange and mysterious venue. You soon realize that touching a painting transports you into the depicted scene. In the solo show, play as Everest as she explores these pictorial spaces and unravel the underlying mysteries concealed by the gallery.
We are aiming at developing the game on computer and consoles, particularly on PS5 and Xbox Series. The solo show is a puzzle game centered around exploration in first person, and of course it is a single-player game. To summarize a bit their artistic direction, welcome to an art gallery. We will expand upon this further into the presentation. Now regarding our target audience, we're looking to entice players of Outer Wilds and Return of the Obra Dinn. To be brief, we are looking to attract players that are into independent games, that offer exploration and a calm yet slightly disturbing atmosphere.
Our game relies on three pillars: exploration and mysteries, the playful transformation of your environment, and an appeal to the senses. Overall, we want to give the feeling of a realistic protagonist in a surrealistic environment. The game's origin story is a folktale set in Scotland during the Renaissance. At time when people believed image capture souls, it's said that an alchemist managed to channel this energy to give painting life. His name was Odilon, and he was madly in love with the portrait of a woman, Ophelia. Odilon gave her life, but everything didn't go as planned. Ophelia awoke as a shapeless and cruel creature who fled into other paintings. Driven by blind love, Odilon started chasing her in a never-ending pursuit for painting to painting. The tale has been transmitted for generations. It has been linked to many paintings displaying deterioration for an unknown source, which some have claimed is a residue of Odilon and Ophelia passage. However, every theory around this, has been discredited and only remained as a legend.
In the present day, a collector cultivated an interest in Odilon's story. Through careful research, she grew convinced that there was truth to this legend. She gathered a massive quantity of artifacts relating to Odilon and Ophelia, as well as paintings that seemed eroded by these strange corrosions. However, she never managed to prove her theories, enter the paintings, or give them life. She dies right before the game begins. Her estate decides to throw an exhibition to showcase her life's work. It is meant as a celebration of her dedication, but also a dive into her vain obsessions for Odilon and Ophelia's tale. Everest, the protagonist, enters the gallery when the exhibition is still being mounted. Remember, this is set during the night. She is drawn to lights and noises. The gallery practically pulls her into itself. When she enters, the door locks behind her. Everest is trapped, and she immediately travels into a painting just by touching it. If she manages to achieve in a second what the collector failed at her whole life, it's because Everest is a direct descendant of Odilon. Their blood is the key the alchemist used to master the painting travel technology. During her adventures, Everest will slowly unfold the mysteries surrounding her situation. She will come to know the workings of pictorial travel. She will gather knowledge about the gallery, which seems to have a life of its own. The exhibition and the collector's research will guide her towards the legend of Odilon and Ophelia. Eventually, she will undertake her own journey to find them. Her quest leads Everest to find Odilon and Ophelia frozen in the course of their race in between paintings. When she entered the first painting, Everest stopped the charm that kept the chase going. She put an end to the legend. In front of this scene, Everest reaches forward with her hand. She touches them, just like she did with the first painting when she entered the gallery. It produces a bright flash, and Everest finds herself back at the entrance. It's daylight, the corruption has disappeared from the painting. Workers are getting busy putting the paintings up on the walls. Everest gives the hint of a smile. She freed Odilon and Ophelia and found herself on the way. Now, how it will translate into the game. It will feature a first-person camera and a realistic moveset. The player will explore the gallery and enter the 3D spaces of the paintings. They can enter fully into whichever painting they encounter. The gallery will feature gated zones with new paintings, which the player will have to unlock. Through puzzles and exploration, they will accumulate knowledge which will help them make sense of Everest and the world around her. In the paintings, the player will find traces of Odilon and Ophelia's passage, pages of Odilon's diary, and elements of environmental narration. As they get deeper into the gallery, they will also gain knowledge from visiting the exhibition and getting familiar with the collector's research. To solve the various exploration puzzles, the player quickly finds a prism in the gallery. This artifact is a remnant of Odilon's work. It's a multifaceted tool with many abilities that can alter the painting spaces and help progress through them. These are light alteration. The prism becomes a light source which helps you explore dark areas. Infrared vision. Much like the technology used to restore paintings, the prism reveals the painter's preparatory drawings and mistakes as new interactable objects and environments in the 3D space. Pigment fixing. With this ability, the prism freezes a zone before you, which will serve to solve perspective puzzles such as anamorphosis. Blank canvas. The prism removes the art treatment of the objects in front of you, making it wireframe-like and giving you a better understanding of your surroundings. Time alteration. The prism makes time pass in the zone in front of you, transforming organic objects and environments. You start the game with only a few abilities. However, you will be able to gain more as you progress. Here's a gameplay situation for the prism. As you walk on the island of a landscape painting, you see an unreachable peak. Using your infrared ability, you realize the painter initially drew the island in a different area of the painting. With the new revealed shape below your feet, you can now reach the peak.
Each painting features a locked exit. When you reach it, some of the painting elements will overflow into the gallery. This will help open locked doors, access gate zone, and could also, in some cases, overflow into some of the other paintings, making it clear for the player that there is a new alteration to explore. For instance, reaching the exit of a landscape painting and unlocking it would result in a lush, natural environment to invade some part of the gallery. This creates foliage that interact with the gallery space and unlock a new room. The foliage also climb by the frame of another painting to continue into it. Inside this painting B, the player can exploit the foliage to access a new area which is mandatory or optional. The painting will be organized in successive series. The player chooses the order in which they want to explore them. However, their exploration may be blocked inside some painting if they didn't unlock the right abilities yet. They could also notice some elements they can't interact with and unreachable zones, then they will need further skills to access. During the exploration, they gather knowledge of the story with the help of Odilon and Ophelia traces. Eventually, reaching the exit of a painting can unlock new gallery areas, which could contain upgrades for the prism or new painting to explore. Although our game doesn't feature enemies, this type of progression was inspired to us by Metroidvania approach of gating and backtracking. Finally, the player will have access to an adventure log in the form of an exhibition program which will fill itself as they advance in the game. That way, they can easily keep track of the action in the game.
About artistic direction, our main intention towards sound and visuals is to create a credible setup that will become more and more surreal. We want our players to feel this gradually while passing through the gallery, which will lead to the paintings and their associated universes. Here is the first iteration for our vision of the gallery, which is a particular space because it feels like a real gallery, but it will become absurd or illogical. It allows us complete freedom to design this environment without constraints from the real life, for instance. Mostly comes from Layers of Fear as a reference. There is also an inside and outside contrast with an emphasis of light as a scenographical element, because the player won't see the outside of the buildings, which will reinforce the mysterious atmosphere. Our main space inspirations come from white cube museums and independent galleries because our collector was a contemporary character, as is the first.
The gallery's ambience is mostly empty. There are very few sounds from the outside world to create the impression of a separated space. It is both light and cold. Paintings emit a sound signature that leads the player towards a unique room. This signature is composed of the mood, tone, and art style found inside the painting. The closer you get to the painting, the more its ambience leaks into the galleries, creating a transition space between the gallery and the level inside the painting.
And speaking about the paintings, we will build a unique scenography by putting elements from them, so they will become a gateway, where reality mixes with the painted words. This is the first iteration above, inspired by La Piscine de Roubaix, which is a museum built on an ancient swimming pool.
To reinforce the uniqueness of each painting and atmosphere, we have experimented with visual effects. Once the player enters a level, the environment he sees is inspired by the art style of the painting. Those visual effects are not meant to be direct recreation of the art style they are based on, but to expand on them.
In games, we use three different spaces: object spaces, screen spaces, world spaces, which is limiting. We created a new system called DDES, which helps us remove the barrier between those spaces. This system offers us incredible options to do visual effects. Here are some examples. As you can see, we can drive surface shaders using decals, but unlike standard decals, those ones can change transparency, vertex displacement, normals, and can collide with particle system. This will be very useful to create our tools effect. If you want more details, come to see us at our boxes.
In our ideal scenario, we identified 5 paintings that we'd want to implement as levels for the game, for the vertical slice, sorry. We would design our own paintings with their own features, taking inspiration from these references rather than reproducing them. This is an ambitious goal, as we'll need to start pre-production and have direct knowledge of our production flow to see if some cuts need to be made. These paintings give us a range of scenes we feel would prove our concept, from very figurative to abstract, with a variety of environments and game setups for the players, both in terms of art and gameplay. Additionally, the vertical slice would focus on 3 of the PRES-M abilities: light alteration, pigment fixing, and infrared vision. This also gives a good glimpse of our approach with interesting challenges for the player and allows to showcase our vision of the progression and the gallery as a central, evolving part of the world rather than a hub.
We are aware the solution relies on those 3 pillars. Story and art implementation will be the foundation for the wow effect we are aiming for. However, this brings up an interesting issue. Should we put forward gameplay that's more representative of the final experience, or should we showcase how to achieve a sort of wow effect? On this specific issue, we would love to have your feedbacks during Q&A when this presentation is over. At this point, will then help us to quantify the features we will produce. Here you can see a range of paintings and PRES-M abilities we'd like to develop. First, we estimate that 2 different paintings and 2 PRES-M abilities is the bare minimum we'd have to achieve. Then we estimate that 5 paintings and 3 PRES-M abilities may be ideal to convey best possible experience for the vertical slice.
In order to support these missions, on UX and UR side, we decided to improve the offer of our game by offering accessibility. As a team, we believe firmly in removing barriers to our experience. That's why we decided to include accessibility from the beginning. In addition to the base options of subtitles, controller remapping, and color blindness, which is par for the course for the industry today, our team is currently envisioning how we can further incorporate accessibility directly into our gameplay. We know that an early investment into this not just benefits us or gamers, but also our handy-capable public. So, in terms of other support measures, user research, we're going to try to test as early as possible with our target audience, thus allowing our designers to have actionable insights about their design choices when it's easy and rapid to make changes. We intend on testing on a first finished, first tested approach with usability tests on tools, items, level comprehension, etc.
Then quickly about marketing. On this diagram, you can see our two main axes. The horizontal axis represents the narration, which is split between a story to discover through liner scripts or through exploration. On the vertical axis, you have the artistic direction between a single or more varied atmospheres. Outer Wilds is at the center because of its several linear plots that you choose through exploring new areas with specific biomes. As we explained prior, we decided to center our experience through discovering the story with exploration almost entirely. Also, the art gallery setup sets multiple artistic directions with each painting. According to this marketing analysis, which is still to work on, these choices allows us to position ourselves optimally to fill a void in the market. And last, to present the team, we have Antoine and Lucille, game designers, Nino, gameplay programmer, Christopher, UI and UX designer, Raphaël and Camille, technical artists, Rachel and Zaid, game artists, Gaspar, sound designer, and myself, Theo, as producer. And thank you for your attention.
First question, I come.
Hi, Laura from P18. You said your target audience would be fans of Outer Wilds, of Obradin, Firewatch, things like that. But from what you've shown us, I think you're more on the anti-chamber aspect, like more on the puzzle side. So it's interesting to have both aspects, but Outer Wilds and Obradin have very specific things. They are very peculiar in terms of gameplay and action. One thing that link them both is the fact that you advance with the knowledge. The knowledge is what makes you advance on the game. So you can use this, but from what you've shown us, you're more on a puzzle thing, like really more on anti-chamber or even games like Gorogoa or things like that. So maybe you can just check this and see from there.
Thank you. Just, of course, these are also games that were in our gameplay benchmarks. But yeah, it was, we felt these best represented our experience as a whole, but it's a good point and we'll think about it.
Yeah, I think it's more your target audience than the Outer Wilds and Obradin, because if you put the name Outer Wilds and Obradin, there would be expectations, like very high expectations, and don't put you in this situation because it's very difficult to get there. Like it's the goal of a lot of developers. It's great if you get there, but just don't say it right away.
Hello. Well, first of all, great presentation. Very clear. Like it was seriously a great presentation. And second, really good point. You are asking for specific feedback from us, and it's a very good initiative. So, like, good one on that as well. So I'm going to try to answer one of those questions, like the scope for the paintings and stuff. Of course, like the easy answer is it depends. It depends on the size of what's inside the paintings. Well, if it's like the Island of the Dead, is it going to be the whole island to explore, or is it going to be just, I don't know, you're just on the boat at the front of the painting, etc. So be wary of the size of it. Secondly, well, you have a broad variety of paintings and art styles and abstraction and stuff. So it's great. It's an immense creative field, and you have a lot of opportunity to do many cool stuff. And I think you have like talented technical artists to support you on that. Still, it means that for every like differentiation into the art style and the abstraction level and stuff, you will probably need to develop new art workflow. And this is time consuming. So my advice will be to try to focus maybe on one art style, so you have to develop only one workflow that you can replicate maybe on 2 paintings or 3 depending on the size of them. And yeah, that's my 2 cents on that topic. But it's a very exciting project, very exciting, but complicated, but exciting.
Thank you for your feedback.
For your presentation, I have a few questions. On the art direction, you talk about having something realistic and something surrealistic, but after you talk about the gallery and you say it's going to be completely architecturally unlogical. So I don't really understand where it's going to be realistic, where it's going to be surrealistic. So if you can just clarify a bit, thank you.
Of course. About realism, we do not aim for a AAA-like realistic render. We are more like credible. We want our player to be in an immersive place. So we want to build a credible place. You feel like it's a gallery, but you don't need ray tracing things or stuff to feel like you're in there. And after that, we would be more and more immersive and illogical stuff, like in Layers of Fear, for example, with environments making no sense. And I hope that it's clear like this.
Even in the galleries, the environment, the new space you're going to open, they're going to become illogical?
Quite a bit. We have the idea, during the conception, we talk a lot about the medium of installations, for instance, in the art museums or else, in art spaces, and having a building which you can't go outside and see the outside of the building can allow us to make crazy things that the video game medium can allow us, like playing with scale, for instance. You can go through a corridor and then another corridor and then go into, for example, huge spaces that won't be credible in real life, but it's in a video game, so we can create it.
Yeah, I would just advise you to be very careful about the unlogical architectural look, because in video game it can break the immersion at the opposite. And also because you're going to have a kind of very different worlds in your game, and it's very exciting, you're going to have to maybe do some choice between the exploration of the gallery and new space and the exploration of the paintings, because it's going to be a nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you again for the feedback.
Hello, Mathieu Lira from Tactical Adventures. Thank you for the presentation. I may have a very silly questions, but you are exploring through paintings in the game. Have you imagined at some point to have the ability to paint, to solve puzzles, and use that as a gameplay ability?
Yeah, that's exactly like the fantasy we wanted to explore with the Prism tools. So it's like you're actually changing the paintings inside of them. So you're not exactly paintings, because we didn't want to be too much into this movement, because we felt it would really be like I would say a gimmicky magical world, you know. But we want to translate that intention with the tool of the Prism.
Diane, I think you have a question.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. My question is more about the structure of the game. Will there be like choices and some? Will there be different branches? Is it replayable, and the time it would take to finish the game?
So we talked about an 8-10 hours experience. We don't aim at choices in the game exactly because the narration will be presented through exploration and not through linear script or exchanged interactions with other characters. However, the idea is, that's what we wanted to mention when we talk about Metroidvania approach, is that you could have to re-explore paintings you previously explored. And so you get a map that's slowly building of the entire game world that can present new challenges and new opportunity to unfold, unravel the narration. So yeah, we're not aiming either at a replayable experience necessarily.
Okay, and sorry, I have another question. It's about the vertical slice. What, how do you envision it exactly?
Could you precise in what aspect?
Like what part will you show? Like just the inside of a few paintings and display the puzzle mechanics, or?
Yeah. So ideally, so there was this slide, if I can find it. Ideally, we wanted to showcase 5 levels. That would be 5 paintings,
Okay.
and these 3 abilities of the prism. But we do know that it's an optimistic goal, and so we're prepared to cut it.
Thank you.
Hello, Mathieu, NetEase. I have a quick question to follow up on the structure of the game. If I understood well, when you start the game, you have access to, let's say, a limited number of paintings, and once you've solved the series of painting, you're gonna have access to another room in the exhibition. That's correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you can come back, as you mentioned, with the Metroidvania stuff. Okay. I'm curious to know if you have any intention to have this specific Metroidvania feature, which is a sequence skip, which allows you to go to different areas if you find a shortcut or stuff like that, or is it? It's already a very ambitious project, I know, but I wanted to know if you had that in mind at some point to allow for replayability in some.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it yet, or actually was in our first intentions when we wanted like direct passages between the paintings and stuff. It was very complicated to design, and so we decided to drop it and focus on the most important. But it's still somewhere, I guess, floating, and maybe we can explore that.
Okay, and as mentioned earlier, I think talking about Outer Wilds gives mixed messages in the sense that you're expecting something very clearly open compared to Obradin, which is a bit more sequential, even if you have some freedom, a lot of freedom in the design, and maybe going towards Diane Finch, Swan, or Edith Finch would be probably give a better understanding to the people you are pitching to.
Thank you.
Mylène, I think you have a question.
Yeah, hello. So my name is Mylène and I do marketing as a freelancer. So same, I want to say like first saying your game is inspired by Outer Wilds and Return of the Obra Dinn will probably not be a good thing for you because the expectation will be really, really high. My other comments will be on the puzzle side. So for me, you have to really choose if you want to go on a kind of hardcore puzzle game or a really easy one. In my mind, I have a game I worked on called Behind the Frame, which is actually also a game about painting and a puzzle game, but really easy one without any challenges and super short. So you really have to choose the direction you want to take. And the last thing I would say is like, I don't really like the name game because the solo show, I think it's like, I don't have the emotion writing it, but the one I had when you were telling the pitch, which I think is really good, like the fantasy is really good. But for me, solo show is more about circus or stuff like that and not really about painting. So yeah, I will probably try to think about another name, even if I know it's really hard to find one. But yeah, that's my feedback.
So for the first question, yeah, I guess it's a hard one because contrary to Beyond the Frame, if I'm correct, is that it's very slow and there is no exploration aspect. And so we have that as well. So I guess we're kind of a balance in the middle of those examples you mentioned. But we can try to define it more in our intentions. Regarding the title, we don't like it either. It made sense for the initial pitch, but it doesn't anymore. And we're very close to finding a new one. So maybe the next presentation will have a new title.
Thank you.
Yes, on the puzzles, kind of bouncing on what the previous speaker said, that balance between the hardcore kind of brain tease, Talus principle, those kinds of games, or the more kind of interactive toy, just, oh, here's a novel interaction, here's a cool space, and some narration, and get out, right? Don't get stuck. I would potentially go more into that direction. I think it supports your wow effect more. I walk into this painting, I get this wow, this thing looks good, and I get this interesting novel mechanic there. Thinking of games like the first level of, or the second level of Unfinished One, or the way you play with, you interact with a little flash game called Windowsill, where you just kind of poke and prod and stuff, and that feels good. There's an interesting, like, nice thing to play with there. And then I look at your puzzle mechanics, and I see light alteration, and that's basically a torch, right? I'm not sure what pigment fixing is, but infrared vision is like I'm thinking like the Batman vision or the Witcher investigation mode. And I'd probably choose less of those, because I don't need, we've seen all that stuff dozens and dozens of times. I'd probably maybe try and go harder into something a bit more crazy, and maybe a bit more tactile, a bit more analog. Yeah, the splashing, the shooting paint in Splatoon, that's something that feels good, that's interesting, that I can kind of express myself to a certain extent in there. I'd go maybe a bit more there.
Thank you very much for the feedback. Unfinished One and the very playful, like throwing stuff all the time aspect is definitely something that, as well, that we have in our mind. We don't want it to like derail the immersion and stuff, but it's something that we still want to implement with the tool. For the lights, we have a couple of ideas, but they're still being discussed to have something that's maybe a bit more than a light torch, but that still looks like it at first. Infrared is not exactly what you described. Like it would be more like really in tune with. We have examples of a lot of paintings, even abstract paintings, sometimes that when researchers they look at it with infrared or X-ray, and they find that under the first layer of painting, they find really other, sometimes completely other paintings that were hidden. So we really want to play on that. So it won't be like the whole scene in front of you turning like X-ray mode, but rather like revealing shapes in front of you. And so, yeah, we hope it could create like a more minute-to-minute playful aspect for the player, rather than having this vision at once.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. I'm going to bounce on this discussion about puzzles, hardcore, casual. My take on that is that I feel that you are, in the wording, we can hesitate between, are you a game about investigating something or a puzzle game? Because when I think about puzzle game, for me it's one mechanic which is making more and more difficult with the level design. And I'm not feeling that's what you are aiming for in that game. It's more about investigating in the several paintings to find clues to get to another place. So maybe this is a comment, but maybe we should rephrase this as an investigation more than a puzzle game.
Thank you. We talked about investigation, but we felt like it would really verse on the narrative side of things and sort of, be oblivious to the puzzle aspect, and that's why we settle on exploration.
But I think when I saw the presentation, that the first 5 minutes, were about narration.
Yeah.
So basically, I think we are good. saying that in an investigation game?
It's like the intention is exactly a combination of both, but I understand how it can be confusing.
In that case, I have a question. How do you plan to make your mechanics more and more complicated on the time? Did you make some scenarios where you are using the same tool in different ways to make it more and more difficult to use?
We have some ideas of combination actually of tools mainly, but it's since we're like constantly altering between the vertical slice and the full game, we don't have like full-fledged answer to give to that. But yeah, we have discussions and intentions about it, but it's still a bit vague.
Okay, because in the scenarios where you can develop only one of the tool, and I think this is a good idea. In that case, you should definitely bench on different scenarios where this tool could be used in more and more difficult ways. And if it's not the case, then you have to go on the 2 or 3 tools and use a combination.
Thank you very much.
Hello, it's me again. So, okay, questions for all the art team. Did you, and it's going to be tech art as well, so you can both answer. So I have no idea of your, let's say, traditional art skills, all right? But how many artists are you? Just art? And you're mainly doing 3D or traditional stuff?
We are 2 game artists, actually.
Okay.
I am more 2D. Zaid is more cinematic and lighting artist.
All right.
And we also have Camille and Raf, who are technical artists and dealing with shaders and VFX stuff.
All right. I'm going to ask a very tricky question, especially nowadays. It's a very critical question in probably the entire industry and probably in a lot of industries. But did you consider using AI-based workflow well, it's going to be, it could be a very cool way to like transfer style, like transform texture into artistic styles very easily, and it could be a very cool way to use AI as a tool and not as a end result, you know. And I mean, it could be a project suited for that. So.
Yeah, about AI, for now we are not expecting using that as a tool, but it could maybe later. But considering creating paintings, I've been a painter last 3 years in my life, so we considered also maybe creating real paintings to put them into the games after that. Not everyone, but some of them would be, and also other ones would be digitally.
All right. Well, we might talk about this a bit later.
With a lot of pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a last question. I really want to be sure to have well understand, because I'm not really sure at the end. So the player is able to enter in each paintings. That's right? Okay. Can you, so you enter in the painting and this 2D paintings, it's going to become 3D one. Okay. Are the characters are going to be alive, moving? How do you imagine that?
That's why we have lots of variety in our selection, because we have lots of level archetypes we have talked about, and in the 5.1 we have only the dancing races which have characters. That's why we have also most abstract ones like the dripping one, because we are mostly interested not by reproducing the painting. When you enter the painting, you are not expecting to see what is on the canvas, but another scene inspired by that. For example, if I take the dripping one, which is the fourth, this is a 2D technical things you can apply into painting in a real canvas. And we are interested to see what results we can approach with a 3D stuff into a video game. So mixing mediums and exploring what it could become.
Okay, thank you. Really looking forward to see what is going to be visually.
Okay, thanks.
So I guess this was the last question and comment. Thank you a lot for that, and thanks for the exchange. Congrats. And let's welcome the last team of today, Death of Internet.
Real and virtual are intertwined. As a member of the cyber police, you cannot handle cases involving personal relationships. But this time, your very close friend passed away. While mourning in her apartment, you receive a message from her. Thank you. Do your own investigation between two worlds to find out what happened. Welcome to Death of Internet. It is a one-player solo investigation game with a strong emphasis on emotions. We plan to release it on PC and current generation consoles. Our main inspirations are games such as Observer, Outer Wilds, or even Paradise Killer. We define our game as a light investigation experience in a medium between open and closed exploration. Death of Internet is at the top right of this graph. So we expect our target players to like exploration and investigation games with an emphasis on the emotional and narrative parts. For the full project, we are aiming for around 10 hours of playtime. This format allows us to focus on the player's experience and what we want to convey to them. Our vertical slice takes place near the beginning of the game and lasts 15 to 20 minutes in order to introduce the gameplay systems as well as the game universe.
The story of Death of Internet takes place in a contemporary world with more developed technology. a institution aiming to address careers with very developed devices and technologies, where information security analysts and database administrators have emerged. In this world, artificial intelligence have taken a big part in society and are used to predict and make decisions. We play a cyber police officer that recently lost her friend. She goes to visit her apartment, and then she receives a message and thinks she is still alive. The protagonist will start her own investigation. Later on, she discovers the possibility to enter through a virtual world, the internet. In this world, she learns more about her friend through personal affairs such as pictures and blogs. Then we discover more hidden informations. She finds her way that she's a member of a secret organization that aims for the creation of a virtual beyond. Her presence begins to be invasive, that the protagonist finds herself stuck in the virtual. She finds her way to get back into reality, but it's not the same as before. She then discovers another dimension, where she meets her friend. As players, several choices are available to us, leaving room for a dilemma. Was she killed by the cyber police? Did she want this? On top of that, we want a strong emphasis on emotions. The protagonist is a young adult girl, a new recruit to the cyber police that resolves cases related to cyber affairs. She's curious, serious, and dedicated to her work, empathic as a person as well. She'll be doing her own investigation about her friend who died mysteriously. Her friend is an IT engineer. She's very dedicated to technology and new devices, trying to reach new discoveries and how far we can go with crafting new cyber tools. She started believing in a virtual afterlife and spent a lot of time trying to make it real, which led her to be part of a secret organization.
The protagonist's appearance shows a contrast between her serious duty side and her more emotional side related to how she is impacted by the situation and the story. Her dark clothes depicts her duty as a cyber policewoman and her rationality. However, her haircut and pastel sweater show something softer and more personal about her, depicting that she can sometimes also be invaded by her emotions in front of her friend's secrets. Her friend's appearance shows her free and mysterious side. She feels so free and invested as a virtual self that she only kept a black suit. Her eyes are bright, chilling, almost electronic, as she keeps a still stare. Some parts of her might be seen glitching while you're traveling in the virtual world, and she might even appear as a ghostly hologram figure.
Emotional impact. This project being a psychological thriller, we want to immerse the player and impact them emotionally. We will propose intense situations, and we will gradually bring them to a climax.
The player will seek and discover information by themselves. It will be up to them to investigate and experiment on the situation in order to progress in the adventure. The game will be questioning ego, identity, its fragmented nature and its expression through these real and virtual spaces, as well as our relationship to others and ourselves through the internet.
We want the player to dive deeply into a mystery and be hooked by a strong narrative through the story and the gameplay. Since we have two worlds and with the intention to split and merge these two, there will be a first-person view in the reality and the third-person view in the virtual world.
For the controllers, we are aiming to make the game accessible for most people, so there will be keyboard and controller support. We already assigned interactions, and we intend to have the possibility to remap all controls. So how do we switch between the two worlds? The player will use the computer to go into the virtual. And to get back to reality, the player will use a device that will be introduced later on.
The player can interact in different ways with the environment and the elements that compose it. The nature of the interaction depends on each element: open or close a door, a switch, grab, or put an object. The game mechanics will revolve around action verbs that correspond to our intentions of experience and will form a loop. Search, for creating curiosity and search for information. Assemble, for reconstructing fragmented information. Understand, for unraveling the mystery and form deductions. Input, for questioning the game on the fruit of our reflection in order to progress. We can switch between the real and the virtual world at every step of this loop. The saber device is the main source of interaction and progression that the player will have. It will allow players to understand the world and intervenes at all stages of the macro gameplay loop. Information and all kinds of data are mainly stored on physical media such as tapes. These tools allow these tapes to be read. It has several ports and a cable to connect to various electronic devices in order to be able to access information or even transferring data to a blank cassette.
We want to work a lot on the accessibility in our game, and we already studied some possibilities. So we plan to make subtitles for the whole game, a possibility to remap all the controls. We'll be careful with the contrast in the game and about eventual photosensitive epilepsy problems. We will also try to integrate things like audio description, sing language, to have the game playable with only one input at a time. The whole game will be available in text-to-speech. Add a lot of reminders during the game, like the possibility to see a sum up of the story at any time. Add the possibility to skip any part of the games to only enjoy the story if someone wants to, and many other little things.
The universe of this game is a cassette punk retro future based on the late 80s. Abstract virtual concepts are mainly kept human, physical, and tangible. Internet and reality start to merge in collective unconsciousness. This is a concept we made of the friend's room as you first see it, still work in progress. In the real world, our visual direction revolves around the warm tone of past memories, fading into a cold thriller search for the truth. It takes place in a semi-realistic setting that appears joyful-ish, but hiding many secrets. These are some ideas we designed for technologies based on all storage formats, such as floppy disks and cassettes. Here, technology is tied to reality and abstraction is kept low. Old technologies like VHS evolved and kept their unique hardware, instead of becoming fully digital.
Well, for the internet, we will create a city-like world, making the virtual experience tangible through this metaphor, bringing internet into the character's physical reality. We'll give it an oniric feel by adding some surreal effects like glitches and ghostly silhouettes. What you see on the left is our first approach for the internet view. It's still a work in progress in black and white for now, and we are still exploring different options.
On the tech side of things, we built a customized version of the Unreal Engine so that we could add our custom shading models on top of the PBR ones. For example, the characters will use cell shading. We made this decision because we wanted to have art direction control all throughout the rendering pipeline. There you can see various methods we tried to create the effects that we may use later in production.
The audio follows the emotional dynamic of the game and changes the mood of the places in consequence. Some moments will create tension, others will create relief, sadness, and more. This mood shaping is partly based around a drone soundscape that blends in with the ambience to create atmospheres and represent unknown technologies around the character. While soundscapes shape the tension, music shapes the relief moments. Glitchy and maybe diegetic, the music will help guide the player throughout the game and help them relax. Sound design of specific elements will rely on an alternative technology without falling into the cliché of the advanced technology, high-tech softwares with soft and decorative sounds. we aim for something more subtle and anchored in a cassette punk or retrofuture reality.
In the game, where emotions and story have a big place, it is necessary to establish an accurate storyboard of the player's progress. We will use linear sequences to stage the environment and the characters, such as the arrival in the apartment. Also, cutscenes and animations will be triggered after certain discoveries of the player to support the emotions that we want to transmit. We will use predefined events to introduce mechanics and important story elements. During the investigation phases, the player will have to explore the friend's apartment, as well as the virtual world they can visit using the device. The player will also discover information allowing to continue the investigation and interact with secondary objects to understand the story.
Marketing-wise, we want a strong and meaningful communication identity so that we can stand out from the competition. Our presence on internet and social medias is by definition mandatory for a game talking about internet. We thought about custom filters, website for Instagram, but we'll see that later. Finally, our team is composed of Keltum as narrative designer, Anthony as game designer, Théophile, Johanna, and Annie as game artists, Robin and Alexandre as programmers, Alan as UX designer, Gaspard and Louis as sound designer, and finally myself as the project manager. Well, we hope you enjoyed this first presentation of Death of Internet. Thanks for your attention.
First questions? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's a question because you said that it was a game about investigating, and from what I saw in the flowchart, the investigation will go as soon as you interact with object. Do you plan to have any feature like in Obradin, for example, with the journal, to have checks on the investigation for the player, to give him or her some agency?
Yes, we plan to have like a memo of like a log of the every story.
Okay.
Yes.
but no active check from the player, because in Obradin you are supposed to validate your choices to make sure that you collect the good clues and you arrive to the good conclusion. But my question is, that's not a trap. It is you are mostly story driven, from what I understand, and you are aiming to have just investigation during the game as soon as you are interacting with the right object.
Exactly. We will be making deductions through the game to have like
of progress. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other question?
Hello. Great presentation. I think I understand where you want to go. So it's one of the goals of the presentation. So thank you for that. So my main question is going to be about, the internet art direction. I know it's still work in progress. All right. No worries about that. Still, the blockout that you show guys was very not abstract. Like you were like putting some emphasis on the fact that you wanted to differentiate the real world from the internet. And from what I saw, it's just a very real, generic sci-fi environment and stuff. And nowadays, like the representation of cyberspace went through many phases since the 90s. And you had like many aesthetic currents that were created from there. Like you have like the cyberpunk stuff, you have vaporwave, you have like cassette punk, and you have many things and many examples of what can be a cyberspace. Transistor is one of them as well. So like you have many examples. I just don't want you guys to miss an opportunity to go crazy into abstraction of your world. Like get rid of stairs and walls and floors and stuff like that. Like you can do this kind of stuff because it's the internet and internet is full of like infinite potential, even visually. So like don't limit yourself to reproducing the real world, but in a sci-fi way. So like be wild. I think you have an opportunity at least. So that's it.
Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, actually, we're not really satisfied with this first vision, but we still wanted to share it with you so you become part of the process. And yeah, some of our thoughts that went into this internet view was that we also these like disconnected virtual worlds where you're just floating in an empty space with like tons of things that you don't know what they are. And at first, yeah, we wanted to kind of take part, like don't do the same thing and anchor it into reality. But as we like progressed production and stuff, we realized it was not the best way. So yeah, of course, we're going to think more about it and take your advice into account. Thank you.
All right. Like a good way in presentation is better to show references and so we understand like your influences instead of like showcasing a working progress of something you're not really sure of. It's better to show where like from where you want to start. So like for next presentations.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, Sylvain from Ubisoft. Thank you for the presentation first. I would like to know how your core game mechanic loop, like the finding items or clue, combining them, and so on, fits into the emotional journey you want the player to live. Because I think there's a narration where you want to tell something that will make the player to have emotions, but the game loop, I don't think it really fits into that. It's just something that feels apart. And do you have more things to explain how does it merge together?
Yes, since we talk about identity and its fragmented nature, we want to reflect that this fragmented nature into every domains of the game. So informations are fragmented, and we want to reconstruct this information. So I thought about action verb that will correspond to our intention for the experience, but it's still work in progress, and we will tell that if it's correspond as we want. So
can we combine? So if I understand well, we have bits of information we will try to combine together. Would it be possible to combine the wrong parts and
yes.
to be okay?
Yes.
What will happen then?
Sorry.
What will happen then if we combine the wrong parts of information? Does it? Will we have another branch in the narration, or a game over, or where will we have?
There will be false routes, and many contradictions to the game. Basically, it's I think it's like lock and key systems, but you can create the key, and maybe it's a wrong key, but it doesn't work, or it leads to a false route. So, but it's still a work in progress.
Okay, thank you.
If I might just answer also narrative design. Well, we'll be having the gameplay through the story, and for the embranchment kind of situations, we're kind of thinking of it. We have situations, we have some, but mechanic-wise, not really. So
Have you tried to prototype these game mechanics? Because you showed us some visual parts of what you done in programming, but have you worked on the gameplay mechanics?
No.
Okay, and that's the main part of the game. You should have already worked on that.
Thank you.
Diane, you have a question?
Yes, Diane from Eco Partners again. Yes, actually, it's a little bit the same question. That can you elaborate a little bit on the emotional aspects and how you want to convey it?
Well, we want the player to through the story to feel different kind of emotions through the sound design, through the art. So we have a storyboard that defines kind of different types of sequences that we can have in the vertical slice. That's it. So it's through the story that we want the player to feel certain kinds of emotions and ambiances.
Okay.
And also the gameplay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, still Gaston, still at UB Bordeaux. But that was my question regarding the emotional impact, because you talked about it a lot. I think it's a huge challenge, so I still take the mic to put the emphasis on this. I think it's really hard for an experience to bring the player into the empathy of what the character is feeling. So I have therefore a more user research question. Do you already know, it's more for Alan, I guess, do you already know how do you plan to test those kind of things, like to see if players feel like the character?
About the emotion, we know that a big part it's the empathy of the players for the characters. So we already know that we need to make characters like credible and with a credible reaction and credible feelings. So the empathy could works. And of course, we will make some playtests to test the story, some tests to test the story if it's great understood, and the feelings of the characters if it's greatly made.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Leonard from Paradox. As a producer, I'm quite cost conscious, and what you are pitching is essentially two games narratively linked in the same engine. You're going to have to work on two art direction, two cameras, probably two styles of UI. My question would be, do you plan to brute force your way through that, or do you have strategy in mind on how you're going to achieve twice as much work as the other team in the same amount of time? Okay. Sorry.
We have this idea of brute force everything for now, because we just decided of a lot of things, and especially for internet, reality, mechanics, and everything, we were in a kind of really rush conception phase for just now, and now we will divide the things into different, we will do both roles together, as we got a lot of teammates. For example, Théophile will do some concepts, Annie will do some 3D stuff, Joanna will like do the characters, but I don't know the word, but yeah. As we got a lot of people working on the project, I think we can do both worlds in parallel, as mechanics will be kind of parallel mechanics. The mechanics that we have in the real world will be kind of the same as in the virtual world. We try to do some elegant things to reduce the time and to not duplicate the workload.
Sorry for the curveball.
Thank you. No, I wanted to bounce on emotional aspects. It's an advice, I suppose, but I am in narrative. You can do you can do some things to force an emotion. So let's talk together after the presentation, because I think you have great games like Firewatch that are really expert into that kind of provoking emotions.
Yes, thank you. I just want to add that indeed we are aware that transmitting emotions to players is difficult, and we have like 2 months of production, and we can do that. Like, we don't have 2 years to make the player feel what we really want. So the idea is that we have intentions. We have these intentions. We want the player to feel maybe empathic, maybe confused and worried and in awe, and so these things are defined, and we'll be cutting some stuff, definitely. That's it. Thank you. Well, yeah. Well, looking forward to meet you then. Thank you.
This is David from Creative Assembly again. I have some responses to some of the questions, pulling it together because you've got a big challenge, as was mostly recently called out, and then there's a question at the end of it. But so if you're going to be able to produce this and you want to avoid the challenge of having to double all of your work, then you have to avoid the recommendation of exploration. You really need to focus on, these are actually the same assets, just delivered in different, some form of procedural different style. Your story should match that if that's what you're going to do. So you have some choices where the scope of work that you're going to do will actually impact the nature of what you're making, so that you don't get to do exactly what you want to do, or maybe you lean into that and that is exactly what you want to do. So here's my question. The character that you've got, I've seen the render of the player character and the character who's gone over to the internet. How much time am I seeing those characters? How much of this is environmental and how much of this is character?
Well, story-wise, what we have for now, I'd say 80% the player, the protagonist, and how much are we left? I'm bad in math. 20. 20. The user friend, because I mean the story will be beginning with the first player, with the protagonist. So the protagonist will be. We want to show this investigation phase during the game, and then by the end of the vertical slice, we'll be having this interaction with the friend.
Okay, so you have a production challenge. The advice, I think, in consensus is avoid, if you can, move your story towards the part that avoids the production challenge, the cost challenge of really creating double assets. That's sort of the takeaway I got from the interactions. I'm seeing nodding heads, so maybe I'm not crazy.
We'll be using magic tricks. I'm kidding.
About these challenges, in the beginning, what we thought is that we would confine the reality to only the studio of the girl. So we don't go outside or anything. We really confine it to a small space. And the majority of the game would be on the internet. And this internet world would be a bit bigger, but still confined, because we can't make an open world in 2 months. So yeah, we will guide the players through this vertical slice. But yeah, for the challenges, for the whole production, be more on the internet and a little less on the real world.
And I think this will be the last question or comment.
I hope it's a good one. Hello, Mathieu from Tactical Adventures. A slight technical question. You mentioned you want to modify Unreal to have your special effects and directions. It used to be mandatory to modify Unreal to make games back in the days. Nowadays, studios ship games without even, well, barely modifying Unreal. So are you sure you really want to go into that? Because it's maybe a lot of work. Maybe there's stuff actually hidden inside Unreal that you can use to make it. So it's quite an endeavor to go deep into Unreal. So
it's something we actually did, and so the only remaining question is useless, not important version in question about deploying the custom engine, but we already have modified Unreal, and we needed this because we felt like art direction-wise we were very limited with having only access to either either data before they are being sent to the rendering, the deferred G buffer, or having access to the completely processed colors in post-processing. So we really wanted to act on this intermediary state, and we could have modified directly the shaders for lit, etc., and not have to build the engine, but we would in that case, we would have been very limited in the amount of data we could have sent in the G buffers. So since we already managed to have our custom engine, I understand it was an investment, like it took a week or so to make the changes. But now that we have a better vision of how this is done, we consider it to have been an adequate choice. And also it allows us later to modify other stuff, like having control over the amount of global illumination with Lumen, for example, that is not accessible at all in the Unreal 5 version. So it's cool to have all those little tweakable things that are not offered by the base engine.
Okay, thank you.
Well, as I said, it was the last question and remark, so let's congrats the team. And as I will ask the whole cohort to come back down for the finish of the day, to congrats them all. And maybe while they are coming down, I will thank all the administrative staff, the technical staff that were accompanying us today. I will also thank the jury, online and here, for the exchange. Don't forget to keep going and talk to the students on the plateau projet in their boxes to keep the discussion. And let us know if we can pass your emails. So if you want to have other exchange between the sessions we have together, so let us know that. You will receive the presentation of today. If you want to, we will do that tonight. So you will have that if you want to finish, to fulfill the evaluation file. And we expect the evaluation file for Tuesday. Sorry for these administrative aspects, but it's important. Because as you see, your discussion are of high value for the students. And I will ask you one more thing, just congrats all these great cohort. Thanks for the work. the time of a quick picture, but I will give back the mic to Salome if you want to give a word for this first presentation.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It was really a great day. You have lots of energy. Your projects are very interesting. Lots of diverse things. It's really great. You did it. You nailed it. So congratulations. And I think we are all looking forward to see the next session. And on my side, I will try to spend more time in between with you because I'm really interested on lots of things. Thank you.
So I think that's okay for today. So thanks to everybody, for the pedagogical team also that I didn't mention before. So for all to be there. So goodbye online, and so keep going with the discussion, and congrats again.